Okay. All right, guys. Thank you for being here. And I really appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak to all of you fine folks here in South Texas, a place I have never visited before. I visited Texas, but never South Texas. By the way, I was going to ask you, how many people here are not on social media at all? Okay, well, you are now, so thank you. Thanks for being here. So I was going to try to get, I had a blazer, it looked very professional, but I had somebody talk me out of wearing that, so I'm not wearing that. I'm just going to wear the t-shirt here. It's great to be here in Edinburg for this festival. This has been a wonderful experience. I'll just tell you, I've been to some sessions places in Houston, which is a little bit bigger than the McAllen, Edinburg area, and there weren't half the people. So the enthusiasm that you folks bring to this is really, really super cool, and I really, really do appreciate each and every one of you for being here. Last night was really spectacular. Now, so what I want to talk about is we spend a lot of time, I've done a lot of stuff, Ancient Aliens, we talk about things that happened in the past, and there's kind of a dearth of, and that's not Darth Vader, but a dearth of new cases, right? I mean, when's the last big sighting we all heard of after the Phoenix Lights? That was 1997. Are there other big sightings since then? I can't remember any. At least none that really made a cultural impact. So the only thing that's happened, I think, recently is these videos that came out in 2018, 2019, and there's a new one that came out recently last year from the government, right? Oh, the government, you know them, the same people that have been lying to you about aliens for the last 80 years, now suddenly want to tell you they know all about aliens, or gosh, there might really be aliens. So when stuff like that happens, it kind of gets my BS meter going off in my head. I'm like, I don't believe in disclosure. I'm not one of the UFO people who's like, oh, please government, tell us everything, and give us validation, give us FaceTime on CNN. I don't care about any of that. Because I don't trust the government. I've never trusted them, and I don't trust when they lie to us about Roswell, and lie to us about Edinburg, and lie to us about all this stuff, and I don't trust them now when they tell us, oh, well, these might be alien spacecraft. So what I want to do is go through these videos, and I have an aerospace background. I worked for companies like Boeing and Northrop Grumman on commercial stuff, classified stuff, aircraft, spacecraft, satellites, a James Webb Space Telescope. They just launched that this year, or late last year. I was really lucky. I'm like, wow, the thing actually got up in the air. I worked on it like 10 years ago. So I'm glad to see all these things happening, but I'm looking at these videos and that I'm going to start showing you here, and I just don't trust the version of events that we're getting from the TTSA people, from Tom DeLonge, the rock star, the pop star. I don't really buy it. So I want to show you guys these and talk about them. But that doesn't mean I don't think they're alien spacecraft. That doesn't mean that I've reached that conclusion. I'm just telling you, I have questions about these things, and I'm curious why nobody else is asking them. So the first thing we're going to do is run through this Go Fast footage. And I don't know if we're going to get audio or not. Apparently not. Oh, we got audio. Okay, so let's watch this. This is the third. I like to use it first, though, because it's pretty simple. And the content has change of custody documentation to ensure the presentation is in its original condition, yada yada. It's captured by a Raytheon Advanced Targeting Forward-Looking Infrared Pod, which contains the most advanced sensors and powerful tracking systems available. That was true when this was taken in the early 2000s. Okay. So the sensors in the infrared mode, meaning all it is detecting is heat. Okay. It's aimed 35 degrees left of the aircraft axis, about like that. And it's aimed below the aircraft to 22 degrees, so it's down over here. That's not relevant, a 5-degree radical turn. Target auto track bars are in the middle, little box in the middle. Its airspeed is 252 knots, Mach 0.6, subsonic speed. And it's telling you hot is black and cold is white. Or hot is white and cold is black. So watch. Oh, what is that little thing? Oh. Whoa, missed it. Oh. Oh. Yeah. Okay, so that's the first one. So let me see if I can rewind this back just a little bit, freeze it. Let's go back 10 seconds. Okay, so, some things struck me about this immediately that may not strike other people in the UFO community who didn't used to work in aerospace. But first of all, an infrared sensor is usually very low quality visual resolution, meaning that you're sensing heat. You're not necessarily sensing shape. It's not a high resolution visual thing. And when I'm looking at stuff that might be a flying saucer, first thing I'm looking for is, does it defy the laws of physics? Does it do this crap? Does it shoot up and down the way all the reports we've seen a million times? The answer in this case is no. It flies in what you would call a ballistic trajectory. It's a straight line, right? The other thing is that, this thing's going really, really fast. Well, we don't know that it's going really fast because we don't know the altitude of the aircraft. We don't know the zoom factor really of the camera. I'm sure it might be on there. It doesn't really show it on there. We don't know the zoom factor. So here's the thing. It's called parallax view, right? If you are up in space and you're using a satellite camera to look down on a moving object, an airplane, if you're zoomed all the way out, that object appears to be moving really slow. Right? You could look up in the sky and you can see satellites. You could look up in the sky and see the International Space Station when it passes over South Padre Island once in a while. And it kind of goes like this, right? In reality, it's moving 17,000 miles an hour, but you're far enough away that it looks slow to you. But if you were standing next to it, one time I went to the Phoenix International Raceway for an IndyCar race. And my wife and I at the time, we walked up the stairs to go to our seats, and it actually put you out right to the fence where you then had to turn and go back to your seats. And right at that moment, a guy named Jacques Villeneuve came by in an IndyCar. Literally, we were standing here, and the car was there doing about 170. Okay? That far away from me. Below me, but that far away from me, and it sucked the breath out of my lungs. So it's a completely different experience, but from the sky, he would look like he's going slow around the track in a circle, right? So this thing only looks fast, I think, because they're way zoomed up on it. And it's moving in a straight line, so that's not really a UFO, I don't think. Well, it's a UFO, but it's not necessarily an alien spacecraft. The other thing is that we do have electronic countermeasures. Fighters and planes that we use in the military are equipped with infrared countermeasures, and they're equipped with radar countermeasures. The radar stuff is usually like what they call chaff, which is just aluminum strips, aluminum foil that they eject out of the airplane that fools the radar into thinking that it's right next to a target, and it explodes way short of where the actual plane is. The infrared stuff is hot. It generates heat, which is what would get the attention of that object. And now previous versions of those do not have motors on them. They don't look like a little blob, and they don't move at a fast speed, because relatively speaking, it's got to be moving at least probably a couple hundred miles an hour, no matter how far away you are. So look at this, and I'm going, okay, I don't really buy this. And it could be a powered countermeasure. They could have a new one where they have a little engine in the back of it, and I've looked online and seen some designs that kind of fit for that, and they don't tell you when they test these things. You know who else they don't tell? They don't tell the Navy. Okay, when I worked on secret programs, we tested unmanned combat air vehicles. We never told the Navy when we were going to fly the thing. So they didn't know, and guess what? This, like most of the other videos, the Nimitz video we're going to look at in a minute, they were all done in, guess what? Military test ranges, for the most part, off the coast of California, is where these things were spotted. So I'm kind of like, I'm a little suspicious of this thing. And I'm not really sure that it's a UFO, but I can't completely disqualify it at this point. So let's keep going, and oh, that's the other thing. Did you hear that? The sound was a little bit down. Did you hear those guys? Whoa, dude, look at that. I'm not a pilot. I'm not a military pilot. I've talked to a lot of military pilots. In a potential combat situation, I've never heard of them saying, Whoa, dude, check that. I mean, and here's the other thing too to think about. The Pentagon said that these videos are authentic. Okay? Anybody know what the trick is in that response? They never said the audio was authentic. They have never said this is authentic audio. So I'm like, are they taking a video of something that was just a secret test of some sort of new countermeasure, and they ran it in front of these, let's run it in front of these F-18 pilots and see what these suckers get out of it. And then they're like, the whoa dude thing, it sounds very unprofessional to me. And if they were really felt like they were in a threatening situation, it doesn't seem to me that they would respond that way. So let's go back, get out of here. Oh, I went to the wrong place. And I'm even in a wronger place now. Close that. Okay, so now let's look at the next one. I want to say that one. Next one we're going to look at is called the gimbal video. Okay, this one is famous. It's this object. This is a TTSA video. Travis Taylor and I did an episode of Ancient Aliens where we went into this in great depth. I hope you saw that. It's an excellent episode. Travis and I came away agreeing on something, which is really rare for the two of us. U.S. Navy FA-18 Super Hornet. Unaltered footage captured by a Raytheon Advanced Targeting Forward-Looking Infrared FLIR pod, which contains the most advanced sensors, yada, yada, yada. It did at the time, which again, this is quite a few years ago. And these claims, these statements, these are TTSA. That's not the Pentagon saying that you're hearing their actual voices. Okay, so again, infrared mode, sensor is 54 degrees left of the aircraft axis, so like that, okay? It's in a 20-degree left turn, so it's banking. Sensor is aimed at 2 degrees, well, so this thing is relatively at the same altitude, 2 degrees down, relatively the same altitude as the F-18. The airspeed is 233 knots. In other words, these are all subsonic. So everything you're going to see here is subsonic. Hot display, I missed that. It's white, then it goes black, then it goes white.
Dude, this is a fucking drama, bro.
Bro.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on my ass in. My God. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots west. The whole thing, dude. That's not LS though, is it? It's not. It's not LS. Well, if there's another thing, it's a road station.
Okay, so that one's pretty interesting. What we looked at, what Travis and I looked at when we noticed, they took us, Ancient Aliens took us to this special effects studio in Hollywood. And we went over the whole thing and we looked at the video, and the guy that was there said, you notice this glow that's around that form, right? And everybody's like, oh, well, it looks like a top, you know? But they're thinking that, I didn't see that. Again, I'm an aerospace engineer. What I saw is a plane that you're kind of looking down on from the top. Let's say you're in a dogfight, right? Your plane is here, and this guy is in front of you with his wings spread. And he's doing this, trying to get away from you. So it's like, what I see, and we'll watch it again, is this thing doing this kind of stuff, okay? So that looks like an unmanned combat drone, similar to one of the ones that I worked on, called the X-47B. The glow around it was really, really interesting though, because the glow was white. You notice that the glow was white, and the form itself is black, which means it's hot and the glow is cold. That doesn't make any sense, really, because you should be generating heat from the engines if there's conventional engines there. Let's watch this one again. So we will restart. Far back, sorry about that. Can you see that red dot or no? I can, but I'm 2 feet away from it.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. The whole thing, dude.
So you see how you're looking down on the plane from the top? This little thing might be the tail, this is the wings. And you're looking down on the plane from the top.
It's roasted.
Okay, so this one is interesting. I can't 100% explain it, but I think it might be an unmanned combat aircraft from the top. Now the thing about the unmanned aircraft is that they can do stuff that the piloted planes can't even come close to doing. The reason for that is because there's no pilot inside. So the G-forces that the structure can take are way beyond what the human body can take. So I thought, okay, that one's pretty interesting, but I'm not really sure what I'm seeing there. It looks to me more like it would be it's kind of a plan view of a conventional aircraft. Close that. Now let's look at the big one, the Tic Tac. Okay. Infrared mode. It's in the TV visual mode, which again, infrared TV modes are very poor quality. The azimuth is 4 degrees right of the aircraft axis. Sensor zoom is 1.0. This says zoom. Watch this number constantly. 6 degrees above the aircraft axis, so it's slightly higher than the airplane. Okay, Mach number 0.55. Cold items are black. In black mode, hot items are black, and cold items are white. And it's at 19,000 feet. Watch over here. Zoom is 1. They locked onto it. Now they zoom out to 2, or zoom into 2, still locked. Now they flip it so the black is hot. Still zoomed out to 2. Dark against the bright daytime sky. It's clearly oblong shape. It's a block. Okay. 2. And then pretty soon here, it's gonna just shoot off. They zoom out to 1. Now they're losing track. No, we're losing track, we got it back, which means it could be moving left or right, or the plane is moving and they have a hard time keeping it track. And then it dramatically shoots off the screen. Zoomed up to 2, zoomed out, zoomed up, zoomed out. Oh, where did it go? Okay, so again, I don't want to poop in your punch bowl, but if you watch this, this thing doesn't move. What's moving is the airplane and the sensor. And when they zoom in and out, they lose track on it, okay? 1 to 2, 1, it's jumping around, back to 2. Okay, it did not move. Whatever the Tic Tac was, I don't think it moved. The plane is moving. It's a manual track. There is a dude sitting in the back seat of the F-18 who's trying to keep a track on this thing. And he's got it, and then they zoom in, and they zoom out, and they zoom in, and one time they zoom out, and they just zoom out past it. And it disappears out of the picture because the picture's zoomed up. And you know how I'm pretty positive that that's true? It's because they cut the video off right afterwards. They don't show you what happened 2 seconds later, which is the guy zoomed back out to 1 and reacquired the target, whatever the target was, which is what I'm almost positive happened. So, as I watch this stuff, And again, in infrared, a heat source, like, I don't know, a hot jet engine from a drone or an enemy aircraft is going to look like a blob. You're not going to see the wings and the tail unless you're really, really close. And they're not really very close. So what we have is these videos, these 3 videos from TTSA, where everything is subsonic, nothing does anything that defies the laws of physics. There are questionable discussions happening in my mind on the audio, and they're all about 25,000 feet and traveling, 500-600 miles an hour. None of that is the way an alien spacecraft behaves. Now, how the hell would I know that? Oh, sorry, there's kids here. How the heck would I know that? I'll tell you how. Because I have videos of real UFOs filmed by the space shuttle, which I'm going to show you now. So, to me, what begins to form in my mind is, okay, I don't think any of these are alien spacecraft. I think what they are military test equipment. Most of them, again, all these sightings happening in U.S. military test ranges. That's what I think is going on, is that some of the secret services put up, there was no Space Force then, but they put it out there, and let's see what our military guys, how do they react to it? They mess with the other guys, the Navy grunts. But then the question becomes this. The government, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the mainstream news networks, they all work together. They're all pushing the same narrative. So why does the government suddenly want you to think that these might be alien spacecraft? There aren't that many people like me who are going to go, well, that's a problem, and that's a problem, and I don't know if I believe that. Most people are going to look at those and be pretty impressed by them. So what is it? What are the inside guys, the secret guys, who hold all of the UFO information that they haven't told us since Roswell and since Edinburg happened? What's their agenda? And we'll talk about that at the very end. Okay, so let's take a look at a very famous video, which probably a lot of you, if you don't remember the 1990s, have not seen. This is the STS-48 video. So what you're looking at is a video out the back of the space shuttle, mission STS-48, in 1991, I believe. I'm going to try to use this, so that's not going to work. They are passing from night into day. They're orbiting at about 17,000 miles an hour. This bright line here is the Earth's air glow layer. The line below that, which is darker, which is kind of marked by this thing right here, is the actual physical horizon. They are over Australia. They're moving over Australia, where there's a CIA facility called Pine Gap, by the way. So what's going to happen is, if you notice some of these objects, there's stuff moving around. See this guy over here? He's moving. He's floating around. There's other objects down here, and granted, the screen isn't the best, but there's stuff moving all over the place. Okay, keep your eye, by the way, that's lightning. Keep your eye on the physical horizon line, right about here. Okay? Because what's going to happen is, a little friend, say hello to my little friend, is going to pop up over that horizon, follow along it, and then I'll just let you watch what happens. Oh, there he is, popped up, running from right to left, cruising along, and then bang, flash, and you should be able to see one streak, two streaks. Want to watch that again? So he pops up over the physical horizon, flies along it, then there is this very, very bright flash. And two streaks shoot past it. One right where it used to be, right there, and another one down below. You can barely see those. So what that guy did is in order to be seen, it would have to be at least as big as a space shuttle, okay? It was a powered object, and how do we know this? Well, we know this because it popped up over the horizon, flew along to a certain point, and then when the flash occurred, according to Dr. Jack Kasher, a physicist from the University of Nebraska, studied the video, and he said it comes to a complete stop for 1.5 seconds. Okay, its speed was a little over 18,000 miles an hour when it came to a complete stop instantaneously. That's NASA. If you were in that craft when that happened, you would have been smeared all over the inside of it. But that's not anywhere near as interesting as the next thing that happened, which is the 60-degree turn, which I'm going to show you again.
We'd like to do that maneuver now. We need it to prevent contamination.
Okay, be quiet. Watch the turn when the flash goes off. The acceleration is from dead stop to 243,000 miles an hour, which defies the laws of physics. No physical craft could survive that. It's the equivalent, the G-forces are the equivalent of dropping a 10-story building on top of you. And then it disappears and zooms out. Now there's a whole bunch of other things to talk about in this video. Why was NASA filming it? All this other stuff. But the bottom line is that this is a powered vehicle. We know it's a powered vehicle because it stops. Dead stops, and then it makes a 60-degree turn at 243,000 miles an hour, which is, for all intents and purposes, impossible. So who could do that? Aliens could do that, these guys. Maybe if we had a secret space program and we had secret technology, we could do it. The other thing to go back on, too, is this. The flash, right? So in one of my presentations that I gave about this object, there was a NASA space shuttle pilot there, L. Blaine Hammond. He flew 7 missions on the shuttle. And I said, "You were on the shuttle?" He goes, "Yeah." And I go, "People are saying, NASA says that flash is, it's just a little maneuvering thrusters going off to tilt the spacecraft a little bit like this, a little bit like that." He goes, "I've been on 7 missions. I've never seen a flash like that. That never happens. So that's not what that was." So that's a lie that NASA told. The other thing that I think is really important about this STS-48 video is that it was only shown, not live, but it was shown at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday night on NASA Select TV, and it was only shown once, and a guy named Don Ecker, who we owe a lot to, recorded it. So, it happened to be, like I said, directly over Pine Gap, Australia, which is a secret CIA US military base. So what do you think they were doing? I think they were testing weapons. There's a system called a railgun, which fires projectiles at hypersonic speeds. And I think they tested it on this sucker, and they missed, as you can see, by more than a mile. A lot of miles. So this is either our secret space program stuff that they're testing, which is, kind of interesting that NASA would just happen to be filming when this test took place, or we were really shooting at bad guys. Aliens, which is the scarier aspect of it. Okay, so there's another video I want to show you, which is even weirder. Which is the the STS-80 video. Let's watch that one. Now this one's a little longer. But you're looking at 33 degrees. That is Santiago, Chile. There's an electrical storm going on. But I want you to watch this area right about here, just outside the city. Watch that closely. Did you guys see that? Let's watch it again. Okay. What was that? A tadpole squirting up through space? I don't know, but it's electrified because you can see the glow around it. It's flying through the electrical storm, and there's some weird stuff in the physics of UFOs that imply that you might have a lot of this weird wobbling motion. So you got that, and that's really weird. So they just keep filming, and it goes on. It's going to go on for a few more minutes here. They just keep filming. They're looking at Santiago. Let me advance it a little bit, because it can get boring. And again, they just got the camera running. Again, there's the air glow layer. There's the solid horizon of the Earth. They're zoomed up. They're rotating, gimbaling the camera around. You've got stars in the background. Some of those are stars. Ooh, there's some thunder and lightning. Well, lightning anyway. And then shiz begins to get a little weird. So watch from the right side of the screen. I think it's coming up here in a couple minutes, a couple seconds. This was a few years later, I think 1994. So the camera's getting weird now because they're zooming up to extreme focus, zooming up as much as they can. That's why you're getting this cloudy effect. And then they'll zoom back out, because that's really kind of a useless view. But they seem to be looking for something. The people that are running the camera are down at mission control. Oh, there we go. There's some electrical storm stuff going off. Oh, shoot. Okay, that's just at the right moment I screwed up. All right. So watch this guy right here at the bottom of the screen. See him coming up at an angle? Floating in, and he hits the atmosphere, and it just glows. The electrical discharge just shoots up. They were looking for this thing with this camera. And now it's starting to slow down, because what's happened is it's hit the atmosphere, and now it's slowing down, and there's all kinds of static discharge, static electricity. Now it's almost completely stopped. Okay, it's stopped. But the spacecraft, the shuttle, is still moving. So what does that mean? That means it's not stopped. That means it's in exact station keeping with the space shuttle. What was that just went by? Something else shot by. Now remember what I told you, one of my criticisms of the TTSA videos is everything's in a straight line. Right? Watch this thing. Keep your eye on that sucker and don't take your eye off of him. Oh, there's something else. What are these things flying through the sky? Oh, there's another one just hit the atmosphere. Look at that sucker. He's going faster. Now he's starting to slow down. But you know how you know that they're in space? Because they're above the clouds, aren't they? So the clouds are below them. Now, what's happening with our original friend there? Over here. He was totally locked with the shuttle. Now he's starting to move back into space. And look, he's got two friends. Two buddies here are coming over to meet him. Hey, what's going on? How did the abductions go today? Did you probe anybody? Now they're forming a triangle, and they just flip positions. Let me rewind that one a little bit. So that, let's rewind it a little bit. Watch those three objects. So they have three different forms. Our hero is the one on the left. Now they're going to rearrange positions, come together, and now our hero is at the bottom of the triangle. And they're kind of floating along. One guy's decided he's going to blink a little bit. And again, what are the guys at Mission Control doing? They're trying to zoom up and focus on this. This is what they're looking for. There they are, the three here. I think the original hero is that guy right there. Pretty sure. Now we've lost him, so we're going to zoom out a little bit. See, I think that's probably the last of those guys, yeah. So let's go back. So, what you have here on this video, and you guys look really bored. Try to make this as entertaining as I can. What you saw is this. You saw something, an object, fly in off the screen. Had to be hundreds of miles away from the shuttle. It hits the atmosphere and it bursts into this glow. You can see all this electrical energy around it. Then it stops or comes to a station-keeping position with the shuttle. Then it decides, oh, I'm bored, so it goes back the way it came. Meets up with two other friends, makes a few little triangles, and then disappears as the shuttle gets too far away. There is no other explanation for that. That, first of all, defies the laws of physics as we understand it with our rockets, because there is nothing in our inventory that we acknowledge exists that can do any of that stuff. What you just saw is a powered vehicle in low Earth orbit enter the atmosphere, have some fun, play with some electricity, and then go back in the other direction from whence it came. That is, by definition, a powered vehicle. And that technology is beyond anything that we acknowledge having today. So there's only two explanations. Either we have a secret space program that has flying saucer technology, or those are real flying saucers. Those are alien spacecraft. And I think that those two videos, which have been around for 30 years, are 1,000 times better than what TTSA is putting out. So what's the government agenda? Why are those two videos I just showed you not being talked about on 60 Minutes, not being talked about on CNN, not being talked about in the New York Times? Why are only these other videos, which I think are pretty much conventional aircraft, being talked about? So, let's take one more look at another video. This is the last one, I promise. And this is the Jeremy Corbell video. Guys, anybody know who Jeremy Corbell is? People know him? Yeah, nice guy, does a lot of research. He put out a video that he got, I guess last year. Okay, so, let's watch this once through. Got another blob, it's kind of moving around. They zoom up on it. There is audio for this, but I'm not. Now it cuts and it's suddenly really low to the horizon. Gets lower, gets lower, gets lower, gets lower. Oh, it's gone. So you hear this guy go, splash, splash, Mark Barry range. Because they're saying it went into the water. Okay? No, it didn't. Okay, so the first part of this, I just got to tell you what you're seeing. What you're seeing is somebody recording an infrared monitor, a scanner of an infrared instrument, a monitor, in the control room of the USS Omaha. So what you got is somebody there, probably with his cell phone camera, recording what it is that they're seeing on the screen right in front of them. And they're talking about it, okay? But this thing, as you notice at the beginning, it it moves around a lot. But again, watch the video closely and what you'll see is that it's actually the camera and the gimbal of the instrument that's moving around. It doesn't really appear to be moving very much relative to the sea. Then they zoom up, so you can't tell even much closer than that. So that is the actual ocean, the dark stuff there. This is the sky, this is the ocean, that's a heat source.
Omaha, 50 kid Rocco crawled with massive ability to launch Hilo ASAP.
You notice it's getting lower, and then all of a sudden they cut, and it's way lower, really close to the horizon. Really close to the horizon. Lower and lower and lower.
Yeah, we have 31 knots to stay outside.
And then, look, it's gone.
Splash. Mark Mary Green.
Yeah, we have
Okay, so again, it's right on the horizon, right on above the ocean, and they say splash. Did anybody see a splash? Did anybody see water come up or anything? I didn't see it either, which is the first thing it says. I don't think it splashed. So I'm trying to figure out, what is this thing? Well, the Omaha's moving like this. Well, actually, it's moving in this direction, okay? And the camera's looking out 90 degrees this way. So the object is a heat source, because it's an infrared instrument, so it's a blob of heat, which means it's fairly far away. Could it be, I don't know, Russian, Chinese drone with a jet engine shooting heat out the back? Yeah, it could. And it's flying away from the camera at a 90-degree angle. So if you're at sea, anybody here sail? Anybody? Been on a cruise? All right, if you're at sea and a plane flies overhead, you're going this way, and the plane flies overhead, what's going to happen? It's going to get lower and lower and lower relative to your position until it goes, what's the answer? Over the horizon. And when it does that, it doesn't make a splash. And you know how I know they did this? How I know that's what happened? Watch how it goes below the horizon and then pops back up.
31 knots to stay outside.
How much time do I have left? I got quite a bit of time. So, well, let's talk about President Kennedy's assassination. And you said you paid to sit down with a sitting NASA astronaut, and he told you that was just the Russian Soyuz trying to catch up to it or something, right? Yeah. Well, I mean, they are going to be 40 miles apart at some point, but they don't make right-hand turns, 90-degree turns at a high speed and move away from the space station. So look, you cannot trust anything anybody from NASA tells you. I spent my whole career talking about NASA, Dark Mission to Secret History of NASA, the book I wrote with Richard Hoagland. We must document 100 lies they've told in there. 100 of them at least, including the fact they don't like to tell you that Jet Propulsion Laboratory was actually founded by a bunch of black magic practitioners, Satanists like Jack Parsons and Theodore Von Karman, who used to practice all sorts of occult rituals at JPL in Pasadena. But after they're out of NASA, like L. Blaine Hammond, the astronaut I talked about that I asked about the bright flash on the STS-48 video, he absolutely, was willing to talk to me once they leave. If they're working for NASA still, you can't get any truth out of them. Okay, anybody else? No, not you.
Yes,
not
I'm going to tell you.
Guy in the back of the yellow shirt, yell out. Yeah, you, that's you. Yeah, you. What's that? The Germans. What?
Pyramids.
Are you asking me who I think built the pyramids?
Now
I
you
thought
want
I heard Germans. Okay, next question. That's why I didn't quite hear
I'm
it.
gonna say something about you.
Everybody knows aliens.
No, about you.
Everybody knows aliens.
What Mike said earlier about the Tic Tacs, about government releasing information is from MUFON is true.
Yeah, remember, they're selectively releasing this information. That means they've got a narrative they want you to follow. So my thing is, don't follow the narrative and keep asking other questions. Yeah, sister.
I appreciate your skepticism, and that is refreshing to me.
Okay.
That everybody should be skeptical of anything that they produce, and it's well packaged like that. But my question is that, do you think there's an agenda as far as disclosure coming together with the transhumanist agenda? That they could be putting us into like a collision course?
Disclosure colliding with the transhumanist agenda, you mean them wanting to introduce aliens into polite society for the purpose of what? Interbreeding us with them, making us more like them?
It's already happening.
Ruining our humanity?
I believe that's what happened.
Yeah, here's the thing
It's already happening.
about the aliens. Remember, we have this impression, because they have this advanced technology, some of which we may have seen here today, that they're superior to us in some way. Oh, they abduct us out of our bedrooms. Those are parlor tricks, okay? Think about this. Are we there bugging them on their planet? Do we need anything from them?
No.
No, they need us.
Right.
We don't need them. They are here because they're weak. They are here because they're dying.
Right.
They are here because they are not as good as us. Otherwise, why would they bother? Would we bother studying an anthill if we're not ants and we don't need something from the ants? No. So the aliens may have some advanced technology, but spiritually, physically, they're weaker and they need us. And we have to keep in mind when we do have these encounters, and I've known people that have had direct encounters, you know, you need to be in charge, if you can be, of your experience. I think too many people are willing to accept them as some sort of superior entities. And again, the other thing too is don't ever accept any help you didn't ask for. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the moon landing theory?
My thoughts on the moon landings, I've written a couple books about the moon. Actually, the JFK book, which I wrote too, I talked about the moon landings. We went, we landed. The secrecy that everybody thinks means that they faked it, that's not what the secrecy is all about. It's a Terminator 2 kind of thing. We went there to salvage ancient alien technology, bring it back and reverse engineer it. That's what Apollo was all about, except Apollo 11, which was purely symbolic. Apollo 11 was land in the middle of nowhere, let Buzz Aldrin perform his 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemason ceremony in the lunar module before they go out, which he did, which consecrates Tranquility Base and the moon as a Masonic temple. And then you send Neil Armstrong out first. You know why Neil Armstrong went out first? Well, okay, all the pictures from Apollo 11, you know who those pictures are of? Not one of them is of Neil Armstrong. Every single photograph you see of an astronaut on Apollo 11, all those famous ones, you know, they're all Buzz Aldrin. Why? Because Neil Armstrong went out first so that he could take photographic records of the first Freemason to walk on the moon. Everybody who ran NASA was a member of one of 3 different secret societies, and I talk about this in Dark Mission. Freemasons, the Nazis, and what we call the magicians out at JPL, as I just told you about. They all have the same belief system, that we're descended from the Egyptian gods, Isis, Osiris, and Horus and Seth, who are, you know, it's a bunch of Nazi crap. White Aryans from Egypt, planet Egypt or something, I don't know. But that's what the philosophy was. And so Neil Armstrong went out first solely so he could photograph Buzz Aldrin. And Buzz Aldrin, do you know this? Did you guys know?
No.
That he took a Masonic apron with him in his personal preference pack? A ceremonial apron? And that he did perform a Masonic ceremony in the lunar module before he and Neil. He's admitted this twice in 2 of his autobiographies. He did that stuff. So that was a temple. So then Apollo 12, you know, I have this theory, and Richard Hoagland has this theory, that there's all these glass structures all over the moon. And you know, I can go over the photograph evidence maybe next year I can come back and I can show you all this stuff on the moon. And this was designed to be a meteor shield for whatever civilization, ancient alien civilization, was working there. And, glass with all these meteorites? Well, yeah, because glass, when it doesn't have moisture in it, is about as strong as steel and far lighter weight, and there's no moisture on the moon. So lunar glass, actually NASA, when they're talking about building a base now, wants to build it out of lunar glass. So yeah, it makes complete sense. So Apollo, there's some other missions that went to the moon, and they disappeared. Like Surveyor 4 just disappeared right over Sinus Benedict, where they were thinking about landing. 1 second it was there, 1 second it was gone. No explosion, no nothing, just gone. But Surveyor 2, they landed, they managed to get through all this stuff and get it landed. So Apollo 12 landed about 100 yards away from Surveyor. Apollo 12 landed about 100 yards away from Surveyor 2. Because they knew they could get through all this stuff. And then we've since found out that they did something called a stand-up EVA. Now what is a stand-up EVA? Well, in the lunar module, they had an upper stage and a lower stage. And the engine for the upper stage was basically right smack in the middle of the ascent stage. So what you could do is you could actually stand on the engine casing, open the top hatch, and look around. Now on Apollo 11, they had a really nice color camera, which they ordered the astronauts not to take to the moon with them. They were only allowed to take the crappy, terrible black and white camera. Why? Because they didn't know what you might be able to see from the lunar surface if in fact this stuff was all around the Apollo 11 landing site. But they knew it was there on Apollo 12. So we've now got this whole documentation where we know that they depressurized the cabin, got up, looked around, and then they went outside on their first spacewalk. And there's a 19-minute gap and all this stuff that all fits together circumstantially. They must have seen something really interesting on Apollo 12, because you know what the first thing that they did is? The first thing that Al Bean did was the one thing he was trained not to do. He took that beautiful color camera, which they promised everybody they were going to take to the moon, and he turned it right into the sun and burned the optics out. So pretty much all we have from Apollo 12 is some black and white photographs. Now, as they went on the missions, the cameras got better, but they all had limitations. There were things, in other words, the TV they gave us from the lunar surface could have been orders of magnitude better than it was. But they kept putting limits on it. Now they say it was bandwidth, and we were so far, 250,000 miles away, blah, blah, blah. But, a lot of that stuff is, there's missions like on Apollo 17, the last mission. There's an area called Nansen, and if you look at Nansen, it's a crater, which is actually V-shaped and looks like an entrance. And the mountain it's below is shaped like a hexagon. Now, mountains typically don't shape up like hexagons, but artificial pyramids can look like that, right? So, on the second EVA, they take the lunar rover, the car, they drive up there, they get out of the car, and then mission control takes over the camera. So what does mission control show you for the next 25 minutes while the astronauts are exploring this thing that looks like an entrance underneath a mountain? Everything but what the astronauts are doing for 25 minutes. And they come back and I think Gene Cernan says, yeah, well, we haven't really been able to see anything more, look around any more than you've seen. And I'm like, we didn't see anything. All we saw was empty desert. So there's all this secrecy, this is a long answer to a short question, all this secrecy around Apollo that makes no sense, that people want to assign to us faking the landings. I say no, we really went there and we really brought back technology and we reverse engineer it, which leads back to why they killed President Kennedy. Because he was going to go to the moon with the Russians and share what we found. And if what we found was going to be ancient alien Anunnaki technology, that was not acceptable to MJ-12. So, yes, sir.
Okay, about the moon. Is it artificial?
The moon, I don't think is artificial itself, but it's been modified very heavily because it's made, if you look at the oxygen isotope ratios of lunar soil versus, or out of the earth, it's the same. So what that tends to imply, and there's a whole theory that Dr. Tom Van Flandern put out in a book, it's also in my book, The Choice, that the planets are basically balls of plasma that get fissioned off the sun when it's in its early stages, and they spiral out and they cool down and they become planets. That's why they're all on the same plane of the ecliptic, the belly of the sun. It spits stuff out. And the moon would then be fissioned off the earth. And it makes complete sense that the materials would be the same. So there is no foreign material. So the moon is made of the same stuff as the earth. But there's so much modification that's gone on since then. It's quite incredible. Way, way in the back of the grade. You're next.
Yeah, do you think Valiant Thor was an actual alien?
Do I think who? Valiant Thor was an actual alien?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Valiant Thor looks like one of those guys from the TV show Vikings, right? He looks like Bjorn from Vikings. I don't know. Valiant Thor is a great story, but I don't know that I find that there's a lot of evidence. This is one of those things that I put in the category of really curious about it, but don't know for sure.
Right.
Sir in the white shirt.
Yeah, given that we've got Hubble and now the Webb high-power telescopes that are looking into billions of years ago now, do you think there's any hidden agenda in either one of those, or something they may or may not be telling us, may not be telling us?
About space or deep space? Well, I don't know. These are deep stellar mapping telescopes, and they, I don't know what you're going to find out there. And if you find something, if you look out there and you're like, find the Doomsday Machine from Star Trek, and it's 1,000 light years away, well, it's not really going to matter because it's going to be quite a while before it gets here. So, I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know that there's anything to that. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that the government is trying to get us regulated because of that treaty supposedly that we had back in the day? What do you think about that treaty?
Well, yeah, there's various stories about various treaties. Let me just tell you, there are secret treaties between governments on Earth that have existed for some time, and what you're seeing now in world events is the precursor to revealing them. And aliens is going to be part of it, but I feel like aliens are going to be near the end of the revelations. They're going to start telling us they're required under these treaties, and when I say they, I mean our government and the governments of other countries are required under these treaties to start telling us the truth. Our true history, what truly happened. So yes, it very well could be that this is part of the preparation, and it's a very, very slow process. And don't forget, there was this thing called the Brookings Report that NASA commissioned in 1958, right after they were formed, that said, if you find evidence of aliens out there on the moon or out there on Mars, it's okay to tell people, but not without a long-term period of cultural preparation. So it feels like that's what we're in the middle of. Okay, yes, in the black there, yeah.
Do you think there's other species of aliens that we can't physically see in this dimension?
Are there other species that are visiting that we can't really see in this dimension?
Yes.
Yeah. Sure there are. There's probably one standing right next to me right now. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, what? Oumuamua. Universe is a big place. There's a lot of weird stuff out there. And as Han Solo said, I've been from one end of this galaxy to the other. I've seen a lot of weird things. That thing was planted. Thing was put in orbit deliberately. So I don't know what it was exactly, but yeah, it was artificial. There's no question in my mind that that's artificial. It's a short answer. Yes, ma'am.
Do you believe that our existence
Do I believe what?
is the book you put out?
I'm sorry, my hearing sucks because I've been to too many Kiss concerts.
That Dr.
About Oumuamua? Oh yeah, and again, so what they're doing now is they're using academics to raise these questions that they would never have touched 20 years ago, again, as part of this process. It's part of this process of starting to tell us the truth. Yes, sir?
Yes, sir. I believe it was Jimmy Carter that ran the promise that he was going to release like UFO
Yeah.
and stuff. But when he finally won and came to office, he wasn't able to, and he was seen like crying or whatever because he was able to like keep that promise. Do you know why that is?
Well, yeah, because Jimmy Carter was not somebody they were going to tell any secrets to. You know, there are some presidents that apparently have had briefings. I know Reagan apparently did. If you go to the serpo.org website, there's a whole bunch of stuff on that. They just weren't going to let Jimmy Carter in on anything. And really, after Kennedy, if you go through, and I hate to keep bringing up my Kennedy book because I didn't do a Kennedy presentation here, but after you go through what happened to President Kennedy, I think they stopped telling presidents the whole story. They started limiting what they wanted them to know. Probably by the time they got to Carter, they were really not inclined to tell him anything. So, although I do think Reagan got a fairly extensive briefing, which is terrifying if you actually read it. Yes, sir.
Yes, what's your take on, I don't know if it's like physics, but, you know, several people who are driving, especially on expressways,
Yeah.
and they're in close proximity to, say, just a typical airplane, or
Mm-hmm.
airline, and they continue driving, but that airplane is like in pause mode. It's not moving.
Yeah.
And everyone's freaking out saying, okay, why is it not moving? And yet they continue on driving.
Yep.
And it seems like that airplane is just staying further and further behind.
Because I'm saying because it wasn't an airplane, it was an illusion, maybe placed in their minds that they saw an airplane. Probably what they really saw was something that wasn't an airplane. I'm not going to say what, alien spacecraft. But they probably got abducted, and that's probably where that whole memory comes from. It's like a memory defect thing. A lot of people have studied that stuff. It's very fascinating. Okay, do I have to take it? Two more questions. You in the back in the black shirt. Yes, sir.
What are your thoughts on
Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar got the crap beat out of him when he came out with his story by a lot of people in the UFO community, most of whom have passed on now. And I don't think that was very fair, because I think his information was very, very interesting. And I've never met Lazar, he doesn't do these things, but I will say this, you know, I worked in engineering, aerospace engineering for 25 years. And I will tell you this, people said, oh, well, you know, he's got a pay stub from Area 51, but he was the cook at Area 51. Bob Lazar was either a theoretical scientist, physicist, like he says, or he was an engineer. He was, because he's the way he speaks, the way he structures his information, the way he provides details, as far as I'm concerned, he's legit. Now, I know he has some weird personal things in his background, but, you know, again, cops can, if the police are under orders from the FBI that you're a terrorist, you know, they can think you're a terrorist and bust you. So as far as I'm concerned, Lazar is telling the truth from what I can tell, which is interesting, because then that means we've had UFOs for a long, long time. Most people don't know this, but we were researching anti-gravity UFO work, spacecraft, in the late 1950s. And T. Townsend Brown, who was a researcher, he went to a meeting at the Pentagon with the U.S. Naval Intelligence, the Air Force, and the Army, and said, I can build you a flying saucer, an American flying saucer, anti-gravity technology. This is how I do it. These are my tests. This is my patents. And they said, thank you very much. And like 3 months later, they absolutely canceled all anti-gravity research funding by the government. Research papers were chopped off, and all the engineers at the various defense contractors got fired. So they got the information they wanted, and then they went out and built their spacecraft. Okay, one last question. You, sir, yeah?
In 2016, during the presidential elections, Bernie Sanders, when he was running, he said that if you want, he would tell the public the truth about the UFO phenomenon. What's your thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, who said that?
Bernie Sanders.
Who? Oh, I'm not making a joke. I just they can only tell what they know, and they only know what they're briefed on. So again, you know, we hear all this stuff about the deep state. Well, there is an alien deep state for sure. There's Majestic 12, and they keep very tight control over that information. So whatever we're being given, you know, what's being released to us is it's designed to come out for a certain purpose to create a certain narrative. And that's what we're living in right now. So people may say, oh, I'm going to release all of the UFO documents when I'm president, but when did they ever do that? I mean, didn't Trump say he was going to? Trump did do Kennedy documents. And that was awesome because I found a bunch of documents that basically proved out my Kennedy assassination theory, as far as I'm concerned. But that was it. And we never really got into UFO stuff. He talked about UFOs a bunch, but did we ever get any real movement? No, because the civilian government doesn't control that information. Okay, guys, thanks very much for having me.
Because we're going to have you back and give you a much longer time slot. Because your presentation has raised, in my mind, at least 1 million questions, which we could spend the next 2 to 3 days just beginning to explore. So thanks again, and we really appreciate you coming.